Thanks for joining me on episode 558 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Rob Berger, author of Retire Before Mom and Dad. I encourage you to find your own journey to true financial freedom. And one way to be inspired to do that is by listening to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend, Scott Mader.
What was it that you wanted out of life? What would success look like? How would it change your life, your family tree? How would it change your children's lives or your wife's life? How would it change the people around you? What would you do that would make an impact and change the world? Really try to get in touch with the big driving emotion behind it.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's episode about investing in yourself by stewarding your time, I talk with you about how too often we find a goal and think it is our reason why, but how our goals and our why can sometimes become the very thing that holds us back, and how to revisit your goals and form a powerful why if you've lost your drive.
As we talk about stewarding your time, wouldn't it be great if you could support this podcast and do it without just taking too long? Turns out you can't. All you have to do is use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon when you're ready to make a purchase via Amazon, and a small commission will come back to support the show just that quick. If you enjoy the show when you are ready to buy from Amazon, just use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon.
We've talked a lot on the podcast about setting goals and about how goals need to be specific, they need to be measurable, they need to be time-bound. And one of the things that we talk about when we talk about smarter goals is relevant. They have to be something that connects to you. And I wanted to dive a little deeper into that today because the truth is having a connection to the goal, having a why for the purpose behind the goal is one of those things that's very, very important if you want to have the stick-to-itiveness to do something big, to do something that maybe is a little scary, something that intimidates you, something like changing jobs, something like launching a business, something like working really hard to restore your finances, something like completely refocusing on how you use your time or your talent or your treasures. When you make these big changes, you've got to have a driven purpose behind it. You've got to have a reason. You know, you've probably heard about people setting New Year's resolutions or setting goals, and you've probably done this yourself, where you set a goal of a diet or changing something massive in your life, and you stick to it really good for maybe 20, 30 days, and then it just kind of drifts away. That happens to me as well. There's goals that I have around exercise, around walking, and I will tell you, they're really hard for me to stick to. And one of the things that happens is the reason why they're so difficult to stick to is because you don't have a clearly thought about, articulated, written down, and understood why behind it. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between a goal and the why. You know, when I'm working in finances, for example, with clients, I'll ask them what they want out of coaching. And often what comes out of that as an answer is a goal, not a why. A goal is something like, I want to get out of debt. There's a clear beginning, middle, and end to that journey. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying goals are bad. But honestly, the truth is most people don't want to get out of debt. Getting out of debt is a goal on a journey to something bigger. They want to get out of debt so that they can leave their job and start a business without being at risk. They want to get out of debt so that they can have a sense of freedom and security in their life. They want to get out of debt so that they feel like they're providing for their family in a way that they've never been able to do before. They want to get out of debt so that their life changes in some sort of massive way. And you could do this with almost any goal, even something as simple as brushing your teeth. Maybe the why behind brushing your teeth is because you don't like going to the dentist. Maybe the why is because you've seen the problems that people have when they don't do that. Maybe the why is because of the emotional connection to being able to establish something as a routine in your life. And see, that's the key. The why is often that emotional connection behind the goal. It's the purpose behind it. It's the bigger thing that it gives you. And even a tiny goal has some level of why behind it. Now, often with smaller goals, it's hard to understand the why. It seems like it's small or petty, but it's still there. But here's the interesting thing. Oftentimes, if we have a goal and we don't actually think about our reason for why behind it, that goal ends up holding us back because at the end of the day, we start driving forward towards it and then we run out of steam. And when you do that often enough, you begin to doubt your ability to do things. You begin to have self-doubt and fear and bigger emotional issues that hold you back. And the same thing can happen sometimes with our why. We have a why that we want to spend more time with our family, for example. And so out of that why, we jump out of a corporate job and we launch our own business, but we don't do it right. And so we end up running around from fire to fire and actually spending less time with our family. That's happened to me over the years as well. There's been things that I've wanted to do, and time with my family is one of them. And there's a season in my life where my driving forward towards my business did reduce the time I spent with my family. But I'm slowly adding that back into my life because I have a plan and a system and a process and a clear way to get from here to there. And I'm paying attention to it. And I'm making sure that that why continues to be front and center so that the little decisions I make each and every day are moving me towards that bigger why rather than holding me back. And that's the trick. If you forget about it, if you don't pay attention to it, then that why can often get in the way. You create a business so that you can spend more time with your family, but then you actually just create a job for yourself with a lot more and bigger things to do, and you spend less time with your family because you never really stepped back and thought about how to get from point A to point B in a way that made sense. Oftentimes, too, you set a big goal and you begin to move towards it, and then you kind of lose steam. One of the things you can do in that case is step back and really spend some time thinking about the reason behind it. Try to get in touch with the emotion. What was it about this goal that was important to you? Not just achieving the goal, but what was the real driving reason behind it? What was it that you wanted out of life? What would success look like? How would it change your life, your family tree? How would it change your children's lives or your wife's life? How would it change the people around you? What would you do that would make an impact and change the world? Really try to get in touch with the big driving emotion behind it. And for some of us, this can be really, really tough and really, really scary. But coming it down and thinking about it, what is your definition of success? Not someone else's definition that they put upon you, but your definition of success. What would winning look like in your mind? What is it that you want to see as a result of achieving this goal? And how are you going to reward yourself as you achieve it? What is it that's going to connect you emotionally to this difficult change? Because the truth is, achieving goals is hard. Breaking habits is hard. Changing your life is hard. And what keeps us going is that emotional connection behind it. You've probably heard the expression that facts tell and stories sell. Part of the reason why story and narrative connects to us as human beings is because we can put ourselves in that story and we can begin to feel what that character felt. Even the most analytical and logical of person is actually driven more by emotion than facts. We make decisions based on emotions, and then we justify them using logic. And the same thing happens to you with goals. If you sit down and all you ever do is the analytical thought behind the goal, it's going to be much harder to stick to it and achieve the big changes that you want to achieve. I'd love to sit down and help you identify a clear why and a clear process to get from here to there. If you've had a big goal around those areas of time, talent, and treasures, and you've been struggling with it, take some time and step back and identify your why. And if you need some help with that, reach out to me, Scott@inspiredstewardship.com. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of time, be sure to sign up for our Stewardship of Time Tips series by going to inspiredstewardship.com/time or texting 44222 time tips, and that'll get you our best tips on stewarding your time. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.